This week on The Short Game, we podcast to the beat. Welcome back to The Short Game. This is a show about fitting games into your life. We talk mostly about short games, the kind of games that you can play in an evening or a weekend, and hopefully play along with us so that you can play about a game a week. It's kind of a thing we're doing. Hope you're enjoying it. I hate intros. I'll probably re-record that later. I am joined this week by my bro host and frequent podcast person, Shane Kelly. How are you doing, Shane?
I'm doing great. Life is beautiful.
It is indeed. And this week we have a returning guest co-host, Laura Nash. How are you doing, Laura?
Great. Short and to the point.
For those of you who may not have caught our iOS games episode, Laura is a longtime friend of the show and friend from small times, and she has more experience with games than either of us put together as someone who has developed games and longtime gamer on iOS and other platforms, and
expert on gaming and on Dora the Explorer.
Yes, a little bit too much on Dora, but not so much Dora anymore, thank goodness.
Anymore.
No more Dora.
Okay, please cut that.
But we are together talking today about a game that I'm really excited about, and that's Crypt of the NecroDancer. This is a game that kind of came out of nowhere for me. It's a Steam early access game, and we'll talk a little bit about our impressions of it. I don't play a lot of early access games, but this game really jumped out at me. Before we really dive in, though, what's everybody been up to this week? Shane?
Well, my gaming has been of the pen and paper variety. I am, for the first time, I've been very eagerly awaiting the release of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, as you might have known. I think we've talked a little bit about it on the show. And I've finally got in my hands the player's guide. It's now released. We're still waiting on kind of to complete the library, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster Manual. But
double thumbs up.
The player's guide, I've got to say, I'm ready to now give, after having really dug through it, I'm ready to give my kind of basic review of it, and it's absolutely fabulous. They are doing an amazing job with 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. I was not a fan of 4th edition. 5th edition undoes all of the kind of misbegotten attempts at kind of over gamifying, if I can say that about the game.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Well, 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons, they had this sort of grand plan where they were going to create a version of Dungeons & Dragons that brought in people from all over and enabled them to kind of create a single system that worked well as a video game and as a tabletop game. So it took what has always been a game about storytelling and about infinite choice and reduced a lot of it to a set list of moves that you can do. And that's out the window now. That, I think, was a big thing that drove people away from Dungeons & Dragons during the 4th edition and into the arms of Paizo and their Pathfinder role-playing game, which was based on 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons. Anyhow, the 5th edition now is not only kind of a return, it's to Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition, it's even more so a kind of a greatest hits. It brings all the best things that I've loved about all the previous editions together. I was digging back through old editions of Dungeons & Dragons. You remember I was a big fan of OD&D or original D&D offshoots. There's one that I still love called Adventurer, Conqueror, King, that was a offshoot of original D&D. But it is, in a way, a back to the roots approach. And for the listeners out there, the biggest thing that I'm loving about it is that you can dive into this absolutely for free. Go to the Dungeons and Dragons site. There's a version of the player's guide that's available right now for free as a PDF that includes all the essential classes and races. You can build your character, you can learn the rules, and you can find a game. They've really devoted themselves to creating a game that is accessible, and Dungeons and Dragons has not always been very accessible.
Perhaps for its entire history.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I started playing 4th edition when I was really training as a level designer. So my head during the day was in mechanics, and then I went at night and tried to play a bard, which I shouldn't have played for my first character in 4th edition because everything was, area spells that affected different people in different ways, and it was completely mechanics based. Had I not been spending the entire day working on balancing games, I don't think I would have stuck with it. And eventually I turned to a monk because it was much easier just to kick people in the face. Now that I've moved to Chicago, I have a DM who's much more of a storyteller than the Max-Min fellow I played with in Seattle. And we've been talking about swapping when we get to a major milestone. Like maybe there'll be a giant earthquake and everyone will fall into the 5th edition. We'll see what happens.
That's awesome.
Are you currently playing 4th edition?
We are currently playing 4th edition.
All right.
And we're playing where, we're maybe doing an encounter per session because it's so storytelling based.
One of the biggest things that for me is different is that I have never really, really loved games that require a battle mat where you are placing little figurines to mark off a location. 4th edition was the first and now only version of Dungeons and Dragons that absolutely required miniatures and markers on a mat to lay out the battles. 5th edition pulls way back from that. And for storytelling, I find that to be a big change. And battles, I think, will go a lot quicker. I have a game coming up I'm going to be running. I'll let you know how it goes, and hopefully Raygan and I are going to play a little bit over Skype soon. So, but I think you'll really like it. If you've got a dungeon master who's all about storytelling, the 5th edition is going to be the way to go.
And for the show, we've been sort of playing with the idea of doing the short game plays some Dungeons and Dragons kind of event, and we're trying to put together a team and a plan there. What we're trying to figure out is if there's a good way to play Dungeons and Dragons in a format where the play sessions will be incredibly short. We're talking about 30 minutes or so, and to kind of record those as a part of the podcast. So something we're toying with a little bit, and 5th edition has made that a lot more possible. Shane and I rolled up a character for me the other day, and I had a lot of fun, and I'm very excited about it. So although this is not really primarily a pen and paper role-playing game show, I hope there's enough crossover for people who are interested, and we'll be talking about that a little more as we go. How are you doing, Laura? What's up?
Pretty good. I just ripped out a few major after school projects, although I'm not in school anymore. But as a result, I've been playing a lot more games that are longer. Revisiting Fez. I played Fez when I had an older computer. The computer cried. I wanted to play Fez on the Xbox, but that is in demand in my household. So now that I have a nice new computer, I put Fez on it, played, and if someone were to if I were to die tomorrow and someone were going to investigate my death, they would think I was a horrible conspiracy theorist because I have papers that say things like the points tessellate written all over the house because I've reached the language decoding session of Fez.
Man, I need to go back and give Fez another go. I started it, and I just started it at the wrong time. It's not a short game. It's a game that will take you, I don't know what we would estimate, but for me, it was taking many hours to complete, and I think I put in probably about 10 before I got distracted by something and never came back to it. It's such a pretty game, though. I really need to make the time for it.
It's very peaceful, and again, that was a game I saved for when I had longer time. I knew that this is probably going to be about a maybe 30-hour game, knowing that I'm going to be decoding and trying to solve some of the higher level puzzles. But other than that, I bought a few 2-player, 4-player games, Love Letter, Coup, and Hanabi. So I've been playing a lot of those.
I'm not familiar with
tabletop
those.
Games.
Oh.
Love Letter is 2 to 4 players, and it's very simple. Everyone basically has, the entire deck is 16 cards.
Huh.
And you're trying to get your love letter into the hands of the princess. Very short games, 6-minute rounds. You play about 4, the game's done. Coup is also known as, it's from the Resistance. It's the short version of the Resistance, which is a larger game. And it's much more about backstabbing. People who like citadels will definitely gravitate towards Coup. And Hanabi is an interesting little co-op game where you're building fireworks and you're holding the deck facing outward, so you don't see your cards, but everyone else does.
Huh.
People can give you hints, but they can only say things like, this, and this are 2s. These cards are red. You can only give either color or number. And then you're basically playing collaborative rummy, trying to lay down suits in order.
I need to play more card games.
They're really good for bars. I bought them because I was going on a trip and I wanted to be able to play them on the airplane.
Oh, that's a really good idea. Huh. Yeah, I haven't gotten a chance to play very many tabletop games lately. The ones that I have been able to play have mostly been actually digital conversions of tabletop games. Like Jamie and I have been playing a lot of the really excellent iPad version of Small World, which we talked about on the show a while back.
I also throw one towards the Lord of Waterdeep port is wonderful for iOS. It's another beautiful board game. The tutorial will take about 20 minutes to get through, though.
I think I've heard about that game, but I haven't actually played it tabletop. I'll have to look that up. Personally, my gaming time has been split between things that I've been playing for the show, like Crypt of the NecroDancer that we're going to be talking about today, and I freaking loved. Spoiler. And also, I've been playing my way through Sonic 3 and Knuckles. If you listen to our episode about Freedom Planet, you'll hear me totally nerd out about the 90s style character platformer type games like that and Rocket Knight Adventures and some others. And because of that, I went on eBay and spent far too much money collecting a bunch of random Genesis stuff that I either had or wanted when I was a kid. And so now on my little TV stand there, I've got a nice Genesis 2, and I've got the little tower of games with the Sonic and Knuckles and Sonic 3 plugged in. And that game is so much better than I remember. Like, when I think back on it, I remember how frustrated I was with it as a kid, and I remember liking the game, but I never really felt like I was making progress. I would play the same level 100,000 times. I would have to start over a zillion times. I'm much better at it today than I ever was. I think just because I've had a lot of practice and I'm an adult with adult-sized thumbs now. I don't know what else has changed, but I'm finding it a lot easier than I found it as a kid, and I'm finding it actually a lot more fun than I found it as a kid. I'm, making my way through levels. Most of the bosses are only taking me 2 or 3 tries to beat, and it's just such a great game. I've already gotten through all of the Sonic 3 levels, and I'm now about 3/4 of the way through the Sonic and Knuckles levels. I'm getting pretty close to the end. And I can actually say that it's kind of a game that you could consider a short game. I did all of that in about 2 days. If you have a Genesis lying around, or the nice thing about those games is that since Sega no longer has consoles of their own to hawk, you can buy them for practically any system. You can get the PS3 Genesis Classics disc, or you can buy them on Steam now. But gosh, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, as put together, is an absolutely great platformer game. It's so fun. I'm just having so much fun with it.
Well, guys, that brings me up to something that I literally just dug out of a closet. I'm showing you now.
For the listeners who can't see, he's got a bin full of Genesis games.
I have literally a bin almost completely full of Genesis games, and my much beloved Sega Nomad, which is the portable version of the Sega Genesis. I've had these in my closet for a while, and I haven't gotten around to replaying any of them. And so I'm trying to decide now which game to play. I've got a huge stack of them. I can kind of rattle them off if you like, and maybe you can recommend one to me, Raygan.
Okay.
This is all the games that Raygan and I bought as children.
Pretty much every one of them were ones that we picked up at Blockbuster when they would.
This is back when I wasn't
yeah.
allowed to play video games.
Oh, you missed out. We were barely allowed. This was something where I think we actually talked more about this on our Freedom Planet episode, because we did a lot of nerding out about our Sega game history. But
so I'm going to go through these as quick as I can, and I'm going to skip some that I know I definitely hated. But there's Bob, Powermonger, Miss Pac-Man, Toe Jam and Earl, Starflight, Mortal Kombat 3 and 2, Sonic Spinball, King of the Monsters 2, Batman Forever, Toxic Crusaders, Streets of Rage 2, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and 3, and Sonic and Knuckles, Ranger X, Lost Vikings, Adventures of Batman and Robin, Phantasy Star 3, Jurassic Park Rampage Edition, Earthworm Jim, X-Men, Arrow the Acrobat, Comic Zone, Lion King.
I think I can stop you because there's a lot of good games in there. But if you're going to just pick one, I would do either one of the Sonic games, Sonic 2 or 3.
Oh shit, I'm dropping all of them.
Or maybe Streets of Rage 2. Streets of Rage 2 is a phenomenal game as well.
Should I play it with or without my Game Genie?
Oh, I don't know. Use the Game Genie. See what it does.
Sure, why not?
I don't even think I knew how to use that thing when I was a kid.
Quick anecdote about Sonic. So when there's a book called Art of Game Design by Jesse Schell, which is one of my favorite books about the topic. And he says that essentially Sonic was invented because when they developed the console, it was really good at rendering screens very quickly from one side to the other. Mm-hmm. And they were like, we have to invent a character that can take advantage of this. So they invented Sonic to move very fast through quickly rendered screens, because that was the one technological advantage of the Sega platform.
Makes sense to me.
That's wonderful. And that it was not only, it's a great way to turn a tech advantage into a gameplay advantage, because that was the one thing that like defined the Sega Genesis. It's fabulous.
Even though, technically speaking, it's not a faster system. You know, it's lower megahertz.
It was just the graphics rendering was faster.
It has a lower color palette, and it can't do things like sprite rotation as well as the Nintendo, but it could render a level moving left to right really quickly.
Very, very quickly.
And it works. It's so much fun to play, even still today. You get a really great story behind all of that with the book Console Wars by Blake Harris. I cannot recommend it enough.
I picked that up in the one of the bundles, Humble Bundle, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Totally read that book. It's phenomenal.
I didn't know Humble Bundle was selling books now.
Yeah, it's a thing. They also sell comic books, and sometimes they have some pretty good selection on there. Speaking of which, today, and this will be out of date when our listeners hear it, so I'm sorry that you missed at least some of it, but today, Humble Bundle, the Humble Store, started their late summer sale, and there's a bunch of really good short games on there, including Little Inferno, which Laura told us about a little while ago, and so I've picked that up. Actually, I already owned it, but I'm encouraging my co-host to pick it up, and we're talking about maybe doing an episode on that in the future. If that's the case, I hope maybe you'll be able to come back and join us again for it, Laura.
I'm almost at 100% achievements on that, which
wow.
Which when you play the game, you'll realize that's kind of sad.
I never get any achievements. I pretty much blow past everything. So, shall we dive into talking about Crypt of the NecroDancer?
I am so excited about talking about this game.
This
I
game
just
is
loved
so
it so
addictive.
much.
It's so wonderful.
It really is. Okay, so
You-
let's set up the game for people who may not have heard about it, because this is a game that was flying pretty well under my radar.
So we've talked about only one roguelike, and that was FTL.
FTL. Yeah.
And FTL is not your traditional roguelike. This is a much more traditional roguelike, I would say, in all but one way, which is that this roguelike forces you to act on the beat because it merges the roguelike genre with the rhythm game genre in a absolute. It's one of those things where, you know, you got peanut butter in my chocolate, you got chocolate in my peanut butter. Two great tastes taste great together.
If you describe, you know, peanut butter and chocolate, you can hear that and think those might be good together. I would never have thought that these two genres could be combined successfully as they have been here. This is more like saying, you know, you got anchovy paste in my fine wine. You put fine wine in my anchovy paste. You know, I would never have considered combining these two genres in a million years.
I mean, I've played poker RPGs and match 3 beat 'em up, so it's at this point, why not do a rhythm game that is also roguelike?
And
And
sometimes,
for that matter, I hate rhythm games.
Oh, you do?
I hate them.
I don't know. That's one of the things that really, this stood out to me as one of the more fun games I've had in the rhythm game genre. So that's something that maybe before we dive into it, let's talk about a little bit of our history with these two genres that we're about to combine. Were any of you any good at DDR or?
I'm decently good. I do as a musician, so I'm very good at rhythm games. I played a ton of Tap Tap Revolution because I was designing some rhythm games for Disney at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I was ripping off all the rhythm game mechanics. So I became pretty good at that. I'm not as familiar with roguelikes, mostly because I was playing the ones that had, you could never quite level up the hearts as you can in this game.
Yeah.
So, you'd get to a certain point, die, and there would be no incentive to start over.
Yeah, and that's where I think this game really stands out. I've always been garbage at rhythm games, particularly dancing games, the kinds of, DDR type things. I had a lot of fun with Elite Beat Agents on the Nintendo DS. That is a phenomenal rhythm game for those of you who kind of maybe are interested in rhythm games but don't want to have to actually move anything other than your finger. But generally speaking, I never really enjoyed them. And actually, I tried playing... what's it called? The PlayStation 1, Parappa the Rappa. I tried playing that recently, and I could literally not get past the first level. I'm that bad. So I've never been good at rhythm games, and for the most part, I haven't thought that they were a particularly great genre. But I know that they're something that a lot of people love.
I definitely enjoyed Guitar Hero.
Oh yeah, that's
And
true.
I think Guitar Hero is maybe the most popular of the rhythm game genres, or it's been one of the most long-lived.
I enjoyed Smogo's Beat Sneak Bandit as well.
Oh, I haven't played that yet. That looks really fun, actually, now that you mention it. And in a sense, I think that combines rhythm with stealth in a similar way that this combines rhythm with the roguelike genre. So that's interesting.
Yeah, the Rhythm Plus is a much more fun genre than just tapping out, because if you're just tapping a rhythm in a game, usually it's completely dependent on how much you like the music.
That's true. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that really was interesting about this game, is that reading a little bit about what the developer, Ryan Clark, who is also known, it's really essentially just him plus some collaborators, but Ryan Clark, also known as Brace Yourself Games, who's developing this game. And I say developing because it's still in development as an early access game. We'll talk about that later. But when he talks about what his goals were for the game, he says that basically he didn't set out to make a rhythm game. He didn't set out to make a game in the rhythm genre. He wanted to make a roguelike because he loves roguelikes, but he wanted to make a roguelike that was fair. And that's something that I think sometimes you really feel like roguelikes aren't fair. I played, not Rogue itself, but NetHack and some of the other old school roguelike games. And those games rely really heavily on you planning out your moves very slowly and carefully, knowing in advance what certain things are going to do. So you kind of have to memorize things like, well, these types of bad guys are really powerful, or these types of bad guys are easy to kill with arrows, or these types of bad guys are vulnerable to light or something. You have to learn this kind of lore to the game in order to have success with it.
And these days, that kind of game is almost short-circuited by the fact that if I have a game that's a roguelike type game, and if I were playing Rogue today, like traditional Rogue, and I walked into a room and there was a new letter on the screen, a capital letter Q or something, my first instinct would be, I really don't want to die in 1 second, so I'm going to flip over to the old Wikipedia, and I'm going to look up what the capital letter Q means in Rogue.
Or what does the blue potion do? Or, and I don't really love that because it's a very slow pace, and also it can feel really unfair. You'll spawn into a level and then you'll starve to death because there wasn't enough food on this level. And it's like, that doesn't feel fair. The game just didn't give me enough food and I starved to death. That's not fun.
And then you have to go all the way back to the beginning and try to remember that next time when you get to level 47, there will not be enough food in that room.
Right. Or it won't be level 47 because it's random.
It's
so it'll be
randomized.
level 63 or level 5. So that's always been my challenge with roguelikes. Sometimes I have a lot of fun with them, but they can be really unfair and they can feel really cruel to you. And some people love that.
Did this game feel fair to you?
It did. And that's because so much of the game relies on skill rather than memorization. You can look at this as a kind of growing out of games like Rogue Legacy or Spelunky that kind of build on the roguelike genre. Like, they have the things that people point to as big roguelike elements, things like permadeath and, the procedurally generated sort of randomized levels and that kind of thing. But
have we talked about Rogue Legacy on this podcast?
Not in any great depth.
I absolutely loved that game. And so don't get me started if you have a big thing you want to talk about. But I just absolutely love Rogue Legacy. Have either of you played it?
Yes, and I'm terrible at it.
I have not. I know I should.
Shane, we will talk about
on my
Rogue
list.
Legacy someday when I get off my butt and
Put a
finish
pin
it.
in the map, okay?
Yeah, so we'll
It's
stick
not
a
a short
pin
game.
in Rogue Legacy.
I don't know if this is a short game either. Have either of you how far have you gotten through this game? I have gotten into and nearly to the end of Zone 2 of 4.
I have as well. I've gotten to the boss at the end of Zone 2, both in single and local co-op.
I've made it into Zone 3, which is fiendishly hard, and I haven't made it through even half of the levels of Zone 3. So we'll talk about the structure of the game soon. As far as a short game, I think that we can kind of bend on this one. We've talked about roguelikes before, and roguelikes are defined by this very short play session. So it's open-ended in the amount of time that you want to pour into the game. Maybe more so than FTL, this game has a very visible endpoint. You can get to the NecroDancer and kill him. But I have not reached that point yet. And but even then, I feel like I've gotten a really complete experience out of the game. And I think this is the kind of game that you can pick up and play and get a lot out of in an evening, a weekend, like the crap that we say at the beginning of the show, without necessarily having to feel like you have to devote your life to it.
You mean the crap you missed in the intro to this episode?
My intros are legendary.
Legendarily awful.
But this game, I think it kind of qualifies, because most sessions of this game are going to be no more than 15 minutes. Like, I don't think I've played from beginning to end and had it take more than 15 minutes before I was dead, but I always felt like I was making progress.
Yes, when you start, your playthroughs will probably be in the tens of seconds.
Yeah, seconds to minutes range for quite some time.
So we've talked a little bit about the game in a sort of a vague sense, and how the developer wanted to make this fair game where every time that you die, and you will die many times in any roguelike, that's sort of the nature of the genre, but he wanted you to know why you died and feel like you died for a fair reason, and I really think he's accomplished that here. But let's finish setting up the game in terms of what it actually looks like, sounds like, and plays like. So in the game, which you'll begin with a cutscene in which Cadence, the main player, the main character, she is searching for her missing or possibly dead father.
They told me I was too young. They told me I needed more training. Huh? I told them to drop dead. How ironic. I don't know how I survived that fall. Something strange must have happened.
In the first moment, in the first cutscene, she falls through the floor and hits her head on a rock and is apparently mortally wounded.
My pulse is beating like a drum, but my blood is running cold. I'm not sure what's going on, but I came here with a question, and I'm gonna find the answer if it kills me.
And the NecroDancer comes along and rips from her body her dead heart and reanimates it to the beat of his necrotic music. So we'll be playing a lot of that. As you listen, you'll probably be hearing the really sweet soundtrack of Crypt of the NecroDancer in the background right now as we talk.
Totally sick beats.
It was sick. So, and speaking of which, it's made by Danny Baranowski. Danny Baranowski is a game music guy who's more famous for his work on Super Meat Boy, Binding of Isaac, and Cannibalt. And all of those have amazing soundtracks. In particular, Cannibalt, which essentially just has one big long track, but it's great. I love the music in that game. And he's done a great job of creating a really varied and interesting soundtrack for this game that's really central to how the game plays. So 2 big thumbs up to Danny Baranowski. So you're regenerated as a walking corpse, I guess? Is it? I don't know, whatever. The NecroDancer has bound your heartbeat to the beat of his evil music. But also, all of the villains or monsters in the dungeon are also bound to the same beat. So you must move on the beat, you can only attack on the beat, but all of your opponents also only move and attack on the beat. And so it essentially takes the turn that you would take in every roguelike and turns those into something that you have to enact every moment, every time the beat hits on a song.
And not to mention, when you reach the end of the song, you absolutely have to go to the next level. It drops you through the floor. So that's something very different from any other roguelike I've played. Because in every other roguelike I've played, I will, in those early levels, grind the heck out of the early levels and try and collect every single scrap of experience and weapons and items that I can from those early levels, because by the time you go down the stairs to the next level, you will be fighting much stronger enemies. That's true here as well, but if you just wander around aimlessly, by the time the song ends, you will be dropped through the floor and you'll be completely screwed because you have nothing.
Yeah, and you have to typically when you're playing through each floor of the dungeon, there is a mini-boss on each floor that you have to kill. If you don't kill that mini-boss before the song that you're playing through ends, then you're dropped into a much worse situation than you would be if you just took the stairs. So it's in your interest to hurry up and play through the game, and it really keeps the pace interesting. It's not chess, it's an action game.
It really changed the play sessions too, because I was playing a lot of local co-op, and when we were talking about, this is a diamond run. We'll talk about diamonds in a minute, I'm sure, but we did different runs for different techniques. This time we're actually going to try to go as far as possible. This time we're mining. I think in most I haven't played as many rogues as you guys have, but when I have, you didn't have to decide which elements you were grinding for. You just stocked up on all supplies before you headed for browner pastures. But in this game, you really need to prioritize, because no matter what, the song's going to end. You're going to be in a terrible situation. And if you didn't get enough money or diamonds or loot before...
Or a cool pair of boots, or a sweet weapon.
Or a whip, or you didn't get your butt back to the store... there's the maps of this, often you'll be stuck in a corner and you have to weigh if it's worth going to the exit stairs or trying to make it all the way across the map to try to get to where you can spend the money. A lot of decision making that you don't normally get in dungeon crawlers.
About those diamonds, that's one of the things that really, I think, is an evolutionary change in roguelikes that we've seen a lot. And I know that, Shane, you're a big fan of Rogue Legacy. I think this is something that this game is learned from Rogue Legacy, which is that roguelikes can be more fun if there is some level of progression, even though you're dying again and again and starting over again and again.
Definitely.
Yeah.
In Rogue Legacy, you are leveling up your mansion and your bloodline, not necessarily your character. Your character dies every time, but as you go, your family legacy grows and grows and grows. And in this game, you collect diamonds that allow you to level up not necessarily your character.
Yeah, there's a few things that you can do, like unlocking additional heart containers so that you can have like a larger amount of life when you go into the dungeon. But apart from that, almost everything that you unlock is actually just almost leveling up the dungeon itself.
Yeah, you're leveling up the items that you'll find.
And unlocking new items means that when you do find that shop, or when you do find that great treasure chest, you're likely to find something more useful to you in it, which is a huge help. Some of the items in this are really cool.
Well, in addition to the store permanent upgrades, one of the aspects of it is you can unlock cages where characters... When you release a character, then you unlock a new area of the lobby, and then you can go train against mini-bosses. You can go train against the creatures you will find in the dungeon. You can now have spells. You can now have gun holsters, and is he some kind of equipment maker?
Yeah.
But you can unlock your friends, essentially. And then as you continue to collect diamonds, you can then buy from more stores. So there's permanent upgrades of your character, but you're also leveling up your options.
The ability to unlock those things, like the ability to practice against the bad guys or practice against the bosses, is actually really vital, because when you've played all the way through those 4 levels of the dungeon and you reach that boss, it's really nice to have played a couple of times against that boss already and have practiced a little bit, to know what the beat of the music is going to be like, to know what the dance moves he's going to pull off are. All of the enemies that you face in the dungeon, all of the monsters, have a particular way of moving on the beat. They either move every other beat, or they tend to move towards you, but only on the 3rd beat, or something like that. All of them have their own little dance that they execute.
Speaking of the enemies, did you guys have any particular enemies that you found incredibly troubling?
Well, a lot of them were pretty tricky. Some of the more leveled up skeletons are pretty hard.
I was absolutely ruined by skeletons.
Really?
Hated the skeletons so bad.
Well, the skeletons, once you get the hang of them, they're not so bad.
You attack her on the side, and then everything's great. For me, when I saw the Nightmare Beast coming, I just was like, oh god. That was one of my most hated mini-bosses. I got down to the Banshee, I figured out the dragon. But when the Nightmare Dog and his Black Pit of Despair descended, I was never able to quite figure out his attack until I unlocked it.
Yeah, I don't know what they're called, but there's these pink floating ghost people that come out of the walls, and they have this thing where they come up behind you very quickly, and then when you turn to hit them, they warp to your rear and attack you from there. And I don't remember if those are in Zone 2 or Zone 3, but they wreck me every time. If I see them, it's bad. It's very bad. So, yeah, Zone 3 is still truly kicking my butt, and I don't know if I'll ever make it past Zone 3, but I'm going to keep at it.
Well, one of my favorite design details is the disco floor, which
Yes.
I found out you could turn off in the settings. Why would you ever turn off the disco floor?
That's so wonderful.
Which is if you are actually, it reminds me actually a lot of DDR, where if you're in, or Guitar Hero, where if you're in the groove, the entire screen changes to reflect the fact that you're actually doing awesomely for this one split second before you lose all your life.
And you get this wonderful disco floor effect. Speaking of which, the groove chain is an incredibly important part of the game. If you're acting on the beat all the time and you don't get hit, then you establish a groove chain. So if I kill an enemy and I'm continuing to stay on the beat, and then I've got a groove chain of 1. And if I kill a second enemy, I've got a groove chain of 2, and I think there's a maximum of 3. And it affects the multiplier that affects how it gives a multiplier to how much loot you get from the enemies that you kill. And it's vital to get a good groove chain and to maintain it, to stay on the beat and to not lose the beat of the song and to not get hit. And if you really observe how the enemies move, it's actually totally possible to kill most enemies without ever getting hit, without ever taking damage, and to keep your groove chain through, multiple levels. So by doing that, you get a lot more coins and you can spend them on upgrades, and that's really the key to making it through to the boss of each level.
That's one of the really hard things about local multiplayer, is that if one of you messes up, you lose the groove chain.
Oh,
Yes.
The other issue is that you're splitting all the loot. So if someone runs over and eats all the apples and turkey legs, then you have 1 life left, you just end up calling him terrible names. And
yes, I've been playing with Julia, my wife, and she, I love her to death, but she ruins my groove chain.
yeah, I mean, Justin is quite talented, my boyfriend, at this game. It's not so much the groove chain as when one person dies and the other person manages to just stay for a long, long time, winning the level. The other person sits there and seethes.
Yeah, that's rough. But actually, what is nice about it...
Once you get on the stairs, they do resurrect your partner.
Exactly.
So.
And the co-op mode is actually a lot of fun. I've only gotten a chance to play it very briefly with somebody at a games meetup, but I really enjoyed that aspect of the game. And I've never seen a roguelike that had a co-op mode like this.
I think more games need exactly what this game has, which is local, same screen co-op.
Mm-hmm.
I will play any game that has that, because that is absolutely what Julia loves, and I like to get Julia to play games. So she's not crazy about video games in general, but if it has co-op and it's not a split screen co-op, she will get into it. Towerfall is still her game.
Explosion Man.
Oh, I have never played that.
Play Explosion Man.
Oh, okay. Explosion Man.
I'll put that on my list.
Incredible.
Awesome. Yeah, so this game's art style, we haven't talked so much about anything about it visually or too much about the art of the game. I would describe it as very SNES influenced. It's got this pixel art style that, and a sort of a top-down perspective that you would be used to from most roguelikes. Did you guys find it effective, or what did you think about the art?
I thought the art was great. It was simple. It was to the point. I didn't think there was anything that really stood out as gorgeous or awful.
Occasionally became a small problem in differentiating loot, because I feel that, some of the loot, especially when you get into, titanium versus, the different types of metals for daggers, have to become somewhat difficult to figure out which one was which, especially in local co-op when your partner was picking up weapons and dropping them. But they did actually have the label pop up when you picked it up, so you always knew if you were getting the titanium broadsword or the plain old metal one. So that was the only time when it became a problem. I enjoy the art for the most part, but I didn't find it, it doesn't have the soothing pixel art of Fez, which I've been staring at, or even a Super Meat Boy.
I'd say it meets the mark. It's pretty enough, and I'd say that a lot of the one thing about the art that I think stands out as absolutely great is some of the animations. The main one that I'm thinking of right now is the weird little wiggly dance that the skeletons do, which I still laugh at sometimes when I see it. And every one of the zillions of enemies that are going to be coming at you are doing a little dance of some kind. And some of them are absolutely great. So I'd say animations-wise, the pixel art here is phenomenal. It's really great. But it's a typical pixel art game, and it's not going to win any huge accolades for originality in art, but it looks pretty darn good.
And the little stone golem dancing from side to side is absolutely marvelous. I almost feel bad killing them because I want to see them dance for a while. And I murder them.
That's what I love about this game, is it's like you're in this dungeon fighting for your life, but it still feels like you're partying in a disco with weird skeleton monsters.
Yeah, when you're doing well at this game, you really feel like you're rocking out a little bit. And something we didn't talk too much about is how simple the controls are. This game uses only 4 buttons, up, down, left, and right on your keyboard. And because of that, you can also play with a gamepad, like a dance pad. So if you have a DDR pad sitting in your closet collecting dust, you can whip that out and play this game. It plays so simply and so fun that in a way, it really does feel like a dance game. Even if you're just dancing on your keyboard with your fingers, you feel like you're kind of really grooving. And the music is fun. And sometimes when you get that groove chain up to 3 and you really feel like you're on a roll, this game feels like a fun dance party in which you kill things. It's so much fun in that way. Did any of you guys get a chance to play this with a dance pad? I know I have not yet.
Sadly, no.
I did not. There was a tale of one in a closet somewhere, but it ended up being a mirage.
Oh, bummer. See, I've been asking around. Unfortunately, I'm just not in the type of crowd where people have DDR pads collecting dust in their closets. And
do you wish you were in that crowd?
Yes.
Coworkers.
Yes.
Coworkers with children is how I almost got hands on a dance pad.
Yes and no. Yeah, I tried to procure one in order to try this game out for it. But this game has a special dance pad mode. Because the controls are so simple, you're literally only pressing up, down, left, or right to move. If you press up, down, left, or right to move into an enemy, you attack that enemy. And there are spells and items that you can activate using 2-button combos, never more than 2. So left and right at the same time will activate certain spells. Up left or up right or down left or down right will activate item slots or spell slots for you. So it's very easy. And actually, I thought that was a huge strength of the game. It's incredibly easy to pick up. And in addition to how simple it is to move around and attack, it's still pretty darn simple to activate your weapons without having to think about it. But because of that, a dance pad, I think, would really work. And they have a special dance pad mode where they lower the difficulty a little bit, because obviously if you're going to have more difficulty moving your legs on a dance pad than your fingers on a keyboard.
I am much more coordinated with my fingers than my legs, yes.
As are we all.
This game is exhausting enough, just the stress of getting through multiple dungeons and staying on beat, that the idea of trying to do that and dancing at the same time is appalling. No, I think it would actually be a blast, yeah, but I would want to do it with someone else.
I think it would, and it would really get the cardio going.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to whip this out with 2 game pads at a party and do the co-op mode and see who survives. So this game is... So this is a early access game on Steam. And playing it was almost a departure for me because I tend to avoid early access games. I usually don't like buying games before they're quote-unquote done. I mean, this even applied for me to games like Minecraft, which I played early on and didn't really enjoy a lot, and then played again much later. Obviously, that game was in quote-unquote early access, beta, whatever they wanted to call it, for how long now? A decade? Like, geez. But it got significantly better as it went along. And every experience I've ever had with games like that, I always felt like it was better to jump in later rather than sooner, because I'm not going to go back and play the game again and again and again in order to check out the, 10% improvement that the developer has made in playability and graphics or whatever they've added. I want to play a game once and play it right. This game I made an exception for, and I'm super glad that I did, because I think actually they're doing a great job with this. It feels complete. Do you guys play early access games?
I try not to too much, but some I really get tempted by. You're right that I think it's a risk, and I feel like almost like with a Kickstarter, it's hard to say, like, am I putting my money towards something that's going to pay off or be worthwhile? So much harder to do. In a lot of cases, this game stretches a little bit on what I like to do with an early access game. I don't like to spend that much more than $10 on an early access game. This game, as it stands, is about $15, $14.99. And that's a little more than I like to spend on an early access game.
Yeah.
So, knowing that, this is a game that I've seen videos of, I know I love the genre of roguelike, I felt a little bit more confident. But I don't know. It's one of those things where I feel like when I'm playing a game early access and I'm helping to beta test something, I shouldn't be spending a lot of money on it. But
I gotcha.
That's just me.
Yeah, you're paying a little bit for exclusivity, but you're also a guinea pig. The only game I've played early access, I wouldn't even say I played it. Sunless Sea by Fallen London, Echo Bazaar, that browser-based game. They put out their first major desktop game called The Sunless Sea, and it was a spin-off of the story. And I was a huge fan of Fallen London, so I started the game and then almost immediately after about an hour abandoned it, because I wanted to make sure that when I put the 40 hours in to have the full game, I didn't play the first 12 in the early access and then replay it. So once I realized that I was hooked, I moved on. That's a little bit of an anomaly, though. I was a Kickstarter backer, so I got early access as part of the package, and I know I'm getting the final game for free. Well, I prepaid for the final game. So early access was just part of the package.
Yeah, and I've done the same. When I backed games on Kickstarter, I tend to kind of hold back on playing them, even if they offer you early access play or a beta or something like that. I tend to hold off on playing them until whatever their quote-unquote official final release is. This game, I felt okay jumping into it when we did, mainly because with roguelikes, so let's say I'm buying an early access RPG, there is zero chance that I'm going to go back and start that game over in order to experience the cool new stuff that was added to the first act of the game. It's not going to happen. Even if it's a short RPG, I want to play through a story. But a roguelike, you're going to be playing through it again and again from the beginning every time, essentially. And with this game, at least you'll be playing through the beginning of each of the 4 acts, from the beginning every time. I think that this game, like most roguelikes, I think it works for early access, because once you've got the core of the gameplay down, and they have the core of this gameplay well in hand, it's working. It's definitely working. The polish is in terms of adding new items, which is cool to see a new item appear. That's great. And that can happen at any time, and it feels like an organic part of your play. To polish the balance, it's great to see that polish increase and to feel like I've already had a couple of updates to the game, and all of them have been little things that didn't overhaul my gameplay experience, but improved it in a small way. So I think that absolutely this game could be called done today. with just a couple of exceptions. I mean, they need to clean up a little bit of some of the artwork on the initial startup screen. They need to fix some of the voiceover for some of there's a couple of little voice effects that sound really weird. I don't know. But the art seems ready to go. The balance of the game and the fun of the game seems ready to go. The music seems totally ready to go. So there's essentially just a small amount of polish that's going to continue to be applied to this game. And I could consider this game done today. This game could be released today.
I mean, this is early access in the sense that buying an iOS game the day it's released is early access. You know that any developer on iOS is going to hold a few things back, or they'll have additional polish bugs, some bug fixes later down the line. There's going to be updates. Often people, 3 months later release new levels, new zones, new pieces. That's what this game feels like. It's complete now, but they're going to do small updates that will keep me coming back.
Absolutely. And if I see an update come down the pike for this game that adds a new boss, adds a new level, I will be all over that, trying to play that, because every piece of content that I've encountered in this game is fun.
So did anybody else try the different characters? Like the Bard?
I actually haven't tried any of those.
You mentioned Bards earlier. Since
Yes, I did. I played the Bard briefly. I do prefer Cadence, actually. But
I did too, but the Bard turned this into a much more traditional roguelike. That's a place where this game as an early access game feels like it might be missing a lot of things, because there are places in that lobby area for you to access tons of different alternate characters. Only a few of them are accessible right now. One of them being the Bard, and the differences in the characters is basically how they move, it seems like. When you move as the Bard, you're moving not necessarily on the beat, but you can move whenever you like, and then the bad guys will move immediately after you.
It transforms it into a more traditional roguelike where you can plan your moves. Which I don't think sounds like a huge improvement for this game, but if you'd like the novelty of trying that style of play out in this same game, I think that's great that they offer that.
I definitely used the Bard not necessarily as a way of playing the game, but as a way of training. I took the Bard into the sort of Beastmaster area. I don't know if you guys unlocked the Beastmaster and the mini boss training to try out playing against all the different bosses, just as a way to kind of test out the different mechanics of the different enemies, see all their different animations.
Yeah, and I think that's
funny. I did the same thing. I took the Bard in for a few people who they moved too fast, or I hadn't got grips on their attack. I knew how to attack them, but didn't understand how to move away from them. So the Bard was just kind of my way of testing my theories. I didn't enjoy the experience of actually being in the dungeon, though. I think it lost what made the game special.
Yeah.
I hate the skeletons, guys.
As far as other play styles, there's another character called Arya that you can play as, and Arya, if she misses a beat, she dies. So it's very hard. I miss beats sometimes just because I'm white and don't have rhythm. And so that really increases the difficulty of the game for me, because it essentially ensures that I will die in the first level. I played as Arya just a little bit, and that's not happening for me. But that's kind of a special, serious, for uber killers of this game. If you want that extra difficulty, you can flex it with that Arya character.
There's also one of those shrines in the game. There's a lot of little shrines peppered throughout the game, and every shrine you get gives you some big benefit, but also gives you varying different drawbacks. And there's a shrine of rhythm that gives you, extra items and loot. But if you miss a beat after touching that shrine, you will die instantly.
Really interesting. But there's other playstyles as well, and I think probably the most important one that they added here, that I think they really drew a lot of inspiration from Spelunky on, is the hardcore mode and the daily challenge. Did either of you guys try the daily challenge mode?
Yes.
I did play some of the daily challenge.
I think this is the smartest thing that they added to the game, and I had a ton of fun playing through the daily challenge. So with the daily challenge, it takes away all of the earned upgrades that you've had, and it lets you play through the dungeon from the very first moment all the way as far as you can get. And you're playing exactly the same dungeon as everybody else who plays the daily challenge during that 24-hour period. So you'll start with just 2 hearts, even if you've upgraded to more hearts later, and you'll start with a pretty bare set of available upgrades. And you're playing hardcore mode during those daily challenges, which means that you don't get to start at whichever zone you want. You have to start at zone 1 and make it through as far as you can get. And what's really great about the daily challenge, the thing that I enjoyed most about it, because let's be honest, I'm rubbish at it. I will never make the leaderboard. It's never going to happen. It's very cool that it exists and that you're able to compare your scores against other people, but what really was exciting for me about the daily challenge is that every single person who completes the daily challenge has the option of recording a replay of their play for that challenge, and you can watch the replay that anybody else has recorded. So if you finish the daily challenge and you have been terrible at it, and you want to see what an amazing player plays this game like, you can then jump into and see a daily challenge playthrough by any of the people on the leaderboard. So you can go right to that top spot on the leaderboard and see somebody absolutely nail the entire game. It's amazing to see. And I just think that's so much fun. I actually lost a couple of hours watching those playthroughs at one point just to get tips on how the game plays and see a really expert player play it. It's awesome. It's a really great addition.
I didn't notice that. I'm going to go back.
And I'll add that you can play it once.
Right.
You can only play the daily dungeon, the daily challenge, one time, and then it's closed for the day. So it's not as if people are playing this multiple times. You were acing it on the first try if you get through the daily dungeon in one go. No one sneezed. No one else walked in the room and distracted you. Both of which have happened when I started the daily dungeon, and then I was like, oh, I'm dead. I have to wait 24 hours to try to redeem myself.
But that's such a great addition to the game. I know that's a popular feature of Spelunky, and I think that this game drew some inspiration there, and what a great addition to this game. Once you've really mastered the game, or even if you haven't mastered the game, it's great to play through those daily dungeons, because it's usually quick. I die within the first level on those most of the time because I'm terrible. But you get to see what amazing players are playing like. It's really cool. And this is a game with great success because it's a fair game. A reasonably good player, better than me, has a pretty good chance of beating the game when they start it. So, those people on the leaderboard, most of them got all the way through all 4 acts plus killed the NecroDancer, and it's just a race for score. And so, yeah, there's definitely hope. If you want to put the time in, you can master this game.
Maybe not you specifically.
No. Maybe not me. But you, listener.
We like to play games
in
an evening or a long weekend, and you absolutely can't master this game in that amount of time.
You could get pretty far, though. Another thing that I think is great about the game is how varied and interesting the bosses are. And there are just 4 of them at the moment. This is an area that I think maybe the game can expand on and add more variety. But when you get to the end of one of the zones and you've beaten the 4 levels of the zone, the 5th level is a boss battle. And it'll randomly select a boss for you to play against. So, for example, there is King Konga, an evil dancing gorilla. And the music in the King Konga level has every 8th beat is a rest, which is a huge change from the rest of the game. You have to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, stop. And you don't move on that extra beat, which totally threw me off. I did not even realize that. I totally got owned by him every single time. Yeah, that's a really hard one. There's another one called Death Metal. Which is a sort of evil death character, and the music on that is extremely fast-paced death metal, and so you have to be really moving at your top maximum speed in order to face off with death metal. What are the other ones? I'm trying to recall.
There's the chess boss.
Oh, yeah. where all of the bad guys are evil chess pieces, and you have to defeat them, and they move according to their chess rules. Really interesting one. And there's one other, and now I can't remember what it was. We'll leave that for the listeners to discover, maybe.
Yeah, I've only beaten King Konga and Death Metal.
I still
did
haven't
not
beaten
beat the chess piece
King
or
Konga.
the other one.
King Konga has a conga line that is like a line of zombies and other bad guys that sort of protect him. And the conga line killed me every time before I could do any real damage to King Konga. But the chess boss
I've only
is so
beaten
bad.
the chess boss.
The chess boss and also Death Metal. Not too terribly hard. The other two are pretty hard.
Yeah, Death Metal, if you just get your pace up, you could basically kill him very quickly, and it's almost staggering.
Mm-hmm.
But you just have to get your druthers together and move forward and not get killed by his minions.
So this game was a ton of fun, and I will definitely continue playing it. I'm going to experiment a little bit with the custom music, because it will actually analyze the beat of your music. It has some kind of software in there that will listen to your existing MP3s and try to assign a beat to them, and you can play against whatever song you want to throw at it. So there's a lot of
I still have not tried that,
there.
but I'm really looking forward to it.
I've been trying to find an appropriate song because they need to be long enough.
That's true.
That's been the biggest challenge for me, is they don't give suggested times. I assume they'll loop, but I've been trying to find a long enough song with a consistent beat because, a lot of pop songs are going to have variable tempos, at least during the bridge, and then I don't want to suddenly die halfway through. So
Just set every single one to Freebird.
just pull out your EDM collection and it'll be fine.
But fortunately, the music that comes with the game is phenomenal, and I still haven't gotten tired of it, so I'm still playing through that. And I think I'll probably be playing this game for a little while longer, until the next game comes along for the short game, and I am trapped and enraptured by something else. But I think this game was a really fun thing to experience. So where can people get this game?
Steam.
That is it right now. It is a Steam early access game. So you can buy this game on Steam for $15. Fortunately, it is available for both Windows and Mac, and I think also Linux. Is that right?
Definitely Windows and Mac.
Linux probably, I don't know. We'll see. Someday it's probably going to be on Linux. I don't know if it's out there yet, but odds are, sorry Linux people, you're probably not listening to this show. Who knows? Statistically. But fortunately, the game plays really well on both platforms. I played through this mostly on Mac, which was nice because I was able to put it on one screen while I quote-unquote did work on the other. Went great. And so totally recommend this game, and you can download it for just $15 on Steam and follow the development, which is happening totally in public, both on the developer's website. They've got a great forum where people are discussing play styles. There's a subreddit for this game that the developer specifically links to from his site, and you can check out where people post great runs or great tips and talk about the new additions to the game as it updates. And of course, you can follow the developer on Twitter, and they're doing a pretty good job of describing their development process there too. So it's an interesting process, and I totally recommend getting in on this game on early access. I don't usually say that. Totally get this game.
Amazing. I liked the music. I really did.
I did too. It's a little bit. It's not the kind of thing that I would put on its own most of the time, but it so works with this game.
It's because it's dancey.
I'm so excited that I get to add a new game to my list of non-gamer friend games.
Yeah.
That I can recommend this to them. Know they're going to enjoy it. Know that they're going to secretly get into all the collection and loot upgrades. It's kind of stealth getting them into other games when I know that, I feel like the same people who like Rock Band will like this game, and you cannot say that about 99% of the games I play.
And certainly not a roguelike.
Certainly not a roguelike.
And this is a great game that you can whip out at a party. You can play this on a TV, and people can play it on a gamepad or dance pads or keyboards or anything with up, down, left, and right on it. Actually, that is one challenge I ran into with this game, is that because the game requires you to be able to hit up and down or left and right, for example, at the same time, it's a little difficult to play on some gamepads. If you have a gamepad that allows you to hit opposing directions at the same time, no problem. But my gamepad has one of those disc-style D-pads that isn't separated. Something like a PS4 controller you could probably use because the D-pad is actually 4 separate buttons. But
or you could reassign the buttons to reassign the directions to the buttons rather than the D-pad.
True, and you can set alternate buttons. So theoretically, you could hit like up on the D-pad and like whatever the bottom of the face button is or something like that to activate things like that. But that just adds some unnecessary complexity. The best way to play this game is with 4 arrow keys on a keyboard.
I'm sure at some point someone's going to hack a Guitar Hero guitar so that they could play this game on there. But for now, I'll stick with my arrow keys.
Absolutely.
Speaking of which, today I saw someone who had beaten Dark Souls with a Guitar Hero guitar.
Dear God.
Is there a video of this? Because I would really like to see that happen.
I'm pretty sure there is. Yes, I just felt that's a game that I bought and then returned because it was too hard. So I didn't even really want to watch that.
Well, that's fascinating. I'll see if I can put a link to that in the show notes. All right. Well, thanks, Laura, for joining us for this episode. And we're going to be talking about some really exciting games over the next few weeks. So I hope that you guys will come back and keep listening. We've got a whole queue of really cool stuff coming up. Hopefully, Laura will be able to join us sometime later in this quote-unquote season when we'll be talking about Little Inferno that I can't wait to play now that it's finally on sale again, and I've been able to convince my co-hosts to pick it up on Steam. And
welcome to the end of the show.
It's the end of the show. And thanks for joining us for another episode of The Short Game. We'll hopefully catch you again soon.
Hey guys, get on my Twitter. I got back on Twitter this week because I was like all off of Twitter. I didn't even give a shit about Twitter. I apologize, Twitter. Twitter was so interesting this week.
It was so lonely without you.
Oh, Shane, we missed you on Twitter.
Guys, there was all this whole Gamergate thing that we decided not to talk about because it was so gross.
Oh, let's not talk about Gamergate on the show.
No.
We're not going to talk about it on the show.
I felt bad to be a man, but I felt good because I was on Twitter.
and you probably followed some ladies with some very interesting things to say about it.
I did. I even found some new podcasts.
Yeah, it's been a productive, if disgusting, week. So you can follow our show on Twitter, where we tweet infrequently, but about very interesting things at _shortgame. And of course, you can follow our podcast on the web at www.theshortgame.net, where you can read all of the show notes for this episode, where we'll be putting links to anything relevant that we think of while we're doing the editing. You can follow me personally on Twitter at Raygan K. That's RayganK. Laura, where can people keep up with you?
Mostly Twitter, at Laura J. Nash, LauraJnash. I do tweet about games sometimes, but you're also going to get a lot of user experience information about there. So,
which is always fascinating. You tweet some great links.
Good. Thank you.
And Shane, you said that you're back on Twitter. What's your handle there?
At 8-Bit Shane.
It is
number 8. The letters BIT and the proper spelling of my name.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us for this. Really, I had a lot of fun. Thanks, guys, this episode of The Short Game. And we will hopefully talk to you again next week on another awesome episode of The Short Game.
All right, play the theme song.
Here it is. You can imagine it.
And then we can all play Crypt of the NecroDancer to it.
Yes. All right. Great. Good stuff. Thanks a lot, guys. And I'll edit this soon. I'm going to hit stop on my record thingy. Stop.